people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. What is our last look at the featherweight title fight between Serrano, the champion, and Nina Meinke, the challenger. Most valuable promotion shows set to go down this weekend on the DAZN platform. Few familiar faces. Unbeaten up-and-comer Crystal Rosario, who we've been talking about. She's going to be on that card. WBO light flyweight champion Jonathan Bomba Gonzalez. He's going to be fighting on that show, as well as Jake Paul, making his next ring appearance. And in the main event, Serrano. Opposite the ring, Germany's own seasoned contender, Nina Meinke. A solid opponent, a solid and serviceable fighter, a southpaw like Amanda's a southpaw. And what is a battle of the southpaws? Now, Nina really isn't in Serrano's league. She isn't. But that doesn't mean that you can discredit her. That doesn't mean that you can talk her down. She would be a solid and serviceable fighter, a serviceable opponent for almost any other featherweight in the division. And currently, she's ranked at number 1 with 3 of the 4 sanctioning bodies, the WBA, the WBO, and the IBF. And that way, if Amanda takes care of business this weekend, and I think she's going to, this would allow her to hang on to those 3 alphabet titles for a while longer if she so chooses to. Though I don't expect that she will, because she's also inked a contract with the PFL, and it's my understanding that beyond this fight, she may return to the octagon, to the world of mixed martial arts. So she will have the option to hang on to those belts a while longer. But why would she? Sporting a professional record of 46 wins with 2 losses, 1 draw, 30 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 49 professional bouts. Light years ahead of all the other featherweights at this weight. Light years ahead of most other female boxers in the sport of boxing. That's why even though Nina Meinke isn't in Amanda's league, you can't talk her down, because how many fighters are? In terms of experience and acumen, punching power and durability, accolades and accomplishments. No, Nina Meinke is not in Serrano's league, but very few fighters are. Sporting a professional record of 18 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 4 knockouts, having been knocked out once in 21 professional bouts. That knockout came at the hands of Katie Taylor many, many years ago. I think that was back in 2016, up there at lightweight. Nina Meinke has since moved down in weight, down to featherweight. She's won some fights, she's lost some fights, but she's been around the block, and she's been active, she's been fighting. She's currently on a 6-fight winning streak. She fought 4 times in 2022 and 3 times last year. Last in action in October of last year, opposite the ring, Laura Ledesma. Despite her not being with a major promotional outfit, Nina Meinke's handlers do a very good job of keeping her active and keeping her busy, which is the most they can do. Keep her sharp. This is a big opportunity for her. A chance to try and win 3 of the 4 major titles at the weight. I don't think she's going to, you understand, but it's still a big opportunity. Opposite the ring, Puerto Rico's own superwoman, Serrano. It's hard to give most fighters a chance against her. Serrano, who fought 3 times last year and last saw action in October of last year, opposite the ring, Brazil's own Danila Ramos, very fleet of foot, who spent the majority of that fight on her bike, trying to survive and trying not to get knocked out. It's what usually happens when Serrano's opposite the ring, a fighter who just can't keep up with her and can't keep her off. It's what we saw in the Yemi Mercado fight, the Sarah Mahfoud fight, and the more recent Danila Ramos fight. Not every fighter has the durability to bang in the booth with Serrano the same way that Katie Taylor did and Erica Cruz. Not every fighter can do that. The ones that can't, they get on their bike. You think Nina's gonna do that? Nina Meinke, nicknamed Nina the Brave. She better be taking on this fight. I think she's gonna get stopped. I think she's gonna get knocked out. I think the difference between Nina And the last girl that Amanda Serrano fought, the last girl, Danila Ramos, is Danila had never been knocked out before. She'd never been stopped. And she was a long-rangey fighter, an athletic fighter with good ring coverage.
What's ring coverage?
That she can cover a lot of ground. That she's got long legs that make 4 long strides. So when she gets on her bike, she can move around, she can survive, stay out of trouble, even if she's losing the rounds and losing the fight. Whereas Nina's a bit shorter, stumpier, slower.
I don't think Nina's gonna be able to get away from Amanda Serrano.
We know what Amanda likes to do. She likes to stalk her opponent, walk them down, crowd the pocket, throw punches in bunches. Needless to say that Nina Meinke is not the puncher that Amanda Serrano is. She doesn't have Amanda's power
Or her output.
her work rate. She's not going to be able to fight Amanda Serrano off mid-range to inside, so her best bet is to move around. Though as stated, because I don't think she's as light on her feet and fast on her feet as Danila Ramos was, I think Amanda's going to catch up to her, and I think she's going to beat her up. She's going to stop her.
She's been stopped before. She'll get stopped again this weekend.
I think Amanda wins the fight. I think she wins it easy. I think she wins it by way of knockout.
She's gonna beat up Nina Meinke. Look for this on DAZN this weekend.
In men's junior middleweight news, internet rumors abound that the March 30th Tszyu vs. Thurman PBC pay-per-view show is on death watch, related reputedly to the PBC's financial instability. I myself have nothing to add further, except we will be looking out for any developments in regards to this. I first heard this rumor yesterday by a well-known boxing scribe.
Whose name I won't mention.
That it's in jeopardy. It's in danger of being called off. There are any number of nasty rumors swirling out there in the boxing cosmos right now in reference to the PBC's current situation and what their future is, if they even have one. And this is just another. What lends credence to the notion that the card might be called off is the lack of promotion, the lack of marketing from Amazon themselves.
I've seen the PBC's social media accounts post about the fight, but I haven't seen anything from Amazon or on Amazon.
And I am an Amazon Prime member. I regularly use that platform, but I haven't seen anything in terms of marketing for the March 30th show. I suppose that because it's 4 weeks out from now, there is still time to ramp up promotion. But the PBC announced this partnership late last year in December, and we've seen very little in terms of marketing from Amazon.
We didn't see much in December, absolutely nothing in January, most of February.
This month is all but done. This month is all but gone. When you think about the number of fighters that are jumping ship, champions like Ray Vargas, Subriel Matias, Canelo Alvarez, undisputed super middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez, what was the PBC's biggest acquisition and thought of as being their ace in the hole. That even if some fighters are leaving, if nothing else, they have the biggest name in the sport, the top earner, the top draw in boxing.
Not anymore.
None of it is encouraging towards their continued survival, now that Showtime is out of boxing and Fox.
They're on Amazon.
But the deal structure is different, and all the while their stable of fighters, their stable is starting to thin out. To make matters worse, 3 months into the year, they're only doing one show, just one show, and that one show is a pay-per-view. It's behind a paywall.
And that's the only show they officially announced. There's rumors about other shows and other fights, breaking news about what's supposed to be Benavidez versus Gvozdyk all the way out there in June.
But that's not official. That hasn't been officially announced. And even if it is, you're talking about one show, just one show, in the first 3 months of the year. Nothing seems to be on the calendar for April. We don't know what they're going to do in May.
They were supposed to do Canelo Alvarez's next fight. That doesn't look to be happening.
Their presence isn't felt. How are they supposed to compete with the likes of Matchroom and Top Rank and Golden Boy, who have announced several shows and have already done several shows?
Smaller ones.
There are bigger shows en route, bigger nights, bigger fights, and how is the PBC intended to keep up with them and compete with the Matchrooms and the Top Ranks and the Golden Boys when they barely have any shows on the calendar?
Just one, really.
The March 30th pay-per-view, the March 30th show, to make matters worse, that show is going to be going head-to-head with a Golden Boy Promotions card set to happen that same day, except that card isn't a pay-per-view. The PBC's is.
That's not good.
I mean, when one card is so much more expensive than the other, the platforms and the promoters have to justify to the consumer, why are they supposed to pay so much more for one show than the other?
Yeah, I think Tszyu is great. He's box office in his own country. He's a pay-per-view attraction in his own country, but not this one, and Keith Thurman.
And these are the guys in the main event.
Do you think that might be why there's rumors that the show might get called off because Golden Boy's doing a show that same day?
Well, it does make matters worse now, doesn't it? Don't shoot the messenger.
Whenever rumors like this start swirling about the PBC and what is their instability in today's boxing landscape, you always get this rabble of guys that get mad, that get upset that people are even talking about it.
Like all those freaks and geeks that got mad at me when I told them Fox was going to give PBC the boot. The same freaks and geeks that got mad at me when I said Showtime was about to do the same thing. That their business model, their modus operandi, is not sustainable.
And look at where they are now.
So many that are trying to talk down their current predicament, their current situation. Those spin doctors with all their stethoscopes, I think that if this event ends up getting called off...
Not saying that it will.
But if it does, you can't spin that. You can't spin that to be anything other than bad news.
It's all bad.
The one card you announced, the one card you had on the calendar, if that ends up getting called off, there's no way you can spin that to being anything other than being all bad.
The rumor is out there.
Whether or not it's true has yet to be determined. We'll see what happens. Men's light heavyweight news. Benavidez versus Gvozdyk for the WBC interim light heavyweight title would be a slap in the face, says former light heavyweight John Scully. Trainer and former light heavyweight contender John Scully has slammed the WBC for greenlighting a WBC interim light heavyweight title fight between David Benavidez and Alexander Gvozdyk in June. Gvozdyk said terms have been agreed for a fight in June, with many fight fans hoping Benavidez was in the frame to face Saul Canelo Alvarez after he said his May 4th opponent in Las Vegas would be an American. But WBC President Mauricio Sulaiman gave his blessing for super middleweight contender David Benavidez to face Gvozdyk in June. Alongside Mark Ramsey, Scully trains the WBC's light heavyweight champion Artur Beterbiev, who is slated to face Dimitri Bivol in June, having defended his crowns against Callum Smith in Quebec at the end of January. Beterbiev brutally grounded Gvozdyk down in 2019 in Philadelphia in a fight that saw Gvozdyk hospitalized afterwards. Scully cannot understand why an interim championship contest is necessary when his fighter is active and gearing up for one of the biggest events of the year, the undisputed title fight in Saudi Arabia.
You know what I can't understand? How could Benavidez versus Gvozdyk be billed as a pay-per-view when Beterbiev versus Bivol isn't being billed as a pay-per-view?
I don't know for sure here and now if Benavidez versus Gvozdyk will be a pay-per-view, though if history is any indicator of things to come, when it comes to the PBC, whenever they're putting on a halfway decent fight, a halfway solid fight, what they do is they put it behind a paywall.
They better not put this behind a paywall.
How could they? If the undisputed title fight between the two remaining unbeaten champions at this weight, if that fight is set to go down at or around the same time as Benavidez versus Gvozdyk, and that's not a pay-per-view, then how could this be a pay-per-view? It doesn't make any sense to the consumer, the customer.
Why should one fight cost so much more than the other? It's not a better fight.
And it's not a bigger fight. So we'll see what the PBC and Amazon decide to do. Are they going to decide to bill Benavidez versus Gvozdyk as a pay-per-view? And if they do, who do they expect to buy it?
It's for the WBC interim title.
Them appointing one of these guys as the interim champion is insanity, charged Scully. It is an aspect of boxing I truly hate. I think many people don't even realize that an interim champion is not necessary whatsoever. The real champion is active and ready to go at all times. It is unnecessary and it is wrong. Beterbiev is 20-0, with all 20 of his wins coming by way of knockout. He also holds the IBF and WBO titles, while Bivol owns the WBA version. The idea that one of these guys is going to call himself a WBC world champion afterwards is insane, Scully added, talking about the proposed interim bout.
It's all in the name.
The point that John is making is that there's no need for an interim champion if the reigning champion is active and fighting. The whole idea behind an interim champion is a stand-in, a guy who's champion in the interim, in the absence of the actual champion. But once again, there's no need for that because Artur Beterbiev's not absent, so what is this really? The idea that one of these guys is going to call himself a WBC world champion afterwards is insane, Scully added, talking about the proposed interim bout. But I refuse to acknowledge them whatsoever. They are absolutely not going to go down in history as a world light heavyweight champion unless they can somehow fight and defeat Artur. I cannot believe anyone in the boxing game would allow this to happen, and It's been happening for years. It's been happening for some time now. If Benavidez versus Gvozdyk happens, Scully believes any recognition of being a champion should not be afforded to them, given better beef's standing. Let me add that I hope the winner somehow has the honor and the intelligence and is in the grasp of reality to tell people that he will not feel like a real champion until he beats the real champion.
Nobody's gonna look at David Benavidez as the man to beat at 175 just because he beats Gvozdyk, especially since Artur already beat Gvozdyk. He stopped him years ago.
John Scully continued, otherwise, someone walking around with one of those belts pretending that they are the only one champion is a tragic joke and a slap in the face to the game. So here's what it is. The real reason that the World Boxing Council is so quick to crown WBC interim champions at multiple weights, even when the full champions are fighting and are active, is because it allows them to extract sanctioning fees from several fighters at several weights, even when there are already reigning champions. What they're essentially doing is double dipping, and they're not the only ones doing it.
The WBA, the WBO, the IBF, they all have interim champions. They all crown them.
Which creates confusion in a manner of speaking, as most interpret the interim champion as being the fighter in a pole position to challenge for a full title. But there are times when these alphabet organizations go against their own rules and their own logic, because Carlos Adames is interim champion at 160 pounds, but the WBC aren't ordering the fight between him and Jermall Charlo.
They're not ordering the fight between David Benavidez and Canelo. They said in so many words, there is no deadline. There's no time frame for them to order that fight.
So then you ask yourself, if the alphabet organizations can't be held to their word or they can't be held to their rules, then why are these fighters paying them?
Empty promises.
The alphabet organizations make empty promises to the fighters and their teams and their management, as well as marketability. That's a component as well, that a fighter, at least theoretically, becomes a little bit more marketable if he's got some hardware, if he's got a belt or some belts, even if they're not full belts or full titles that they won from full champions.
The optics.
And so David Benavidez is set to move up in weight and take on former WBC champion Alexander Gvozdyk for WBC interim status at light heavyweight. But before John Scully,
Don't get too upset about it.
we don't know how that fight's going to turn out. We don't know who's going to win.
And nobody's gonna look at the winner of that fight as the one true champion at light heavyweight.
If it's the optics that bother John Scully, David Benavidez, he's not going to suddenly become the man to beat if he beats Alexander Gvozdyk, because Artur already beat Alexander Gvozdyk. And what if Gvozdyk wins? Nobody's going to look at Gvozdyk as the man to beat at 175 when Artur already beat him. So I don't think John Scully should get too hung up on the optics of it.
How it looks.
No one is going to confuse the winner of Benavidez versus Gvozdyk as the man to beat at this weight because they won a WBC trinket title.
WBC hands out those things like Halloween candy.